In this video, I'd like to explain the terms hedges and boosters, and these are terms that are often used in the fields of rhetoric and also linguistics. And I've provided just a sample source here of an article that you can read if you are interested in this topic, and I've drawn some ideas from this particular article as well. Hedges and boosters are terms that we use to describe different levels of confidence in our writing. So if you think of a kind of a continuum here of possibility, on the one hand we have statements that we accept as completely true, and we're very sure of them, we don't even question them. And then at the other side of the continuum we have statements where we say, well, something is definitely not this or that. We know that something is true or false. And maybe true and false are in the best terms to use here. We could talk about statements that are and statements that describe things that are not. In between, we have a whole range of possibility. So if we are just a little bit sure, then we might say something is possible. Then we can say something is probable if we're more confident. And if we're quite certain, we're not 100% certain, but we're sort of 99% certain, then we can say that something is likely or certain. Now, as we think about this sort of continuum, hedges tend to err on the side of caution. So we can put them on the right side here. So these are hedges. And then over here we have boosters. And boosters are words that allow us to sort of up the confidence level, to say that something is really likely to be true. Okay? You can obviously do without hedges or boosters in your writing, but they allow you to give a certain tone to your writing. They instill confidence, or they suggest that you're very timid or hesitant. There's a range of possibility in terms of what they do. I've provided a number of examples here of each, and I'll let you read this yourself. But it's probably easiest just to look at an example in a second to show how these things work in practice. Before we do so, though, I just want to explain where the term hedges comes from. If you are hedging on something, so if you are not committing yourself or you are avoiding the issue in some ways, then what that goes back to is literally hiding in a bush, hiding in a hedge. So you're avoiding taking a stance on something, and that's where this term comes from. So maybe that makes it a little bit more realistic or real for you. Okay, so now I had way too much fun here drawing pictures of hesitant and confident people, but let's have a look at an actual example here. And what we'll do is we'll go through this, we'll suggest some ways in which we can add both hedges and boosters to this particular set of statements. The first sentence reads, at the Battle of Batoche, 800 Canadian soldiers defeated 250 Métis rebels. That comes across very much as a fact right now, and if we want to tone that down a little bit by adding some hedges, then we could say something like, at the Battle of Batoche, let's just say roughly 800 Canadian soldiers, or around 800 Canadian soldiers, right? And that makes it seem like we're not quite as sure, or at least we want to give some benefit of the doubt. If we want to seem even more confident, we can say something like, we know that. So we know that at the Battle of Batoche, and so on. The second sentence reads, after the battle, the government made Louis Riel the scapegoat. If we want to seem less confident, we could say, after the battle, it seems that, and we could actually stick this at the beginning of the sentence too, which may be a bit more natural. On the other hand, if we don't want to add a hedge, but we want to add a booster, we could say something like, after the battle, the government clearly made Louis Riel the scapegoat. Okay, so we could say clearly. You'll have to read that as clearly. It's not very clear. And that would add quite a bit of confidence. It wouldn't make sense to add both a hedge and a booster in this case, right? It seems that the government clearly made, it doesn't make any sense. So often you do have to pick between the two if you're going to use one or the other. In the third one, just to speed it up a little bit, we can say his trial apparently captivated the nation. Apparently would be a hedge. You could also say undoubtedly, which would be a booster. And in the last one, we have many people in Quebec had sympathy for the French-speaking Catholic Métis people. If you want to hedge again, you could say they had sympathy for the mostly French-speaking Catholic Métis people. Not every Métis person necessarily was Catholic or French-speaking. If you want to be more confident, you could say, in fact, many people in Quebec, and so on. Right? As you can see then, whenever you write something, you constantly have to make these kinds of editorial choices in terms of the tone that you want to strike. Do you want to seem confident? Do you want to seem nuanced? There's always a balance. And both hedges and boosters have pros and cons. For example, if you use hedges all the time, you're going to seem like you have no self-confidence. It may also clutter up your writing. On the other hand, what's very positive about hedges is that you can show nuance. You can show that you don't generalize very easily. You can show that you're open for discussion and debate. And these are all very positive virtues. And the same thing goes for boosters. If you use them all the time, you're going to seem like you are cocky and you generalize a lot. But on the other hand, if you use them sparingly and in the right places, you can strike a kind of a tone of confidence and authority and so on. So you'll have to make your choice, but the biggest thing is to be aware of your options. And when you know your options, then I think you're going to be a more effective writer. So that's it for hedges and boosters.